A new age of Torchwood is upon us, folks, and this chap looks very happy about it. Kinda creeps me out, though. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and we're going back to the Big Finish Torchwood range, the monthly range, or should I say now it's bi-monthly? It's after this release, it's every 2 months now, so hopefully this isn't a winding down of the range, because I still feel like, with Torchwood Rictus especially, we are now entering new avenues of stories to tell. Now the great part about the Torchwood monthly range isn't just that it can tell expanded stories in modern day Torchwood, and when I say the modern day, I mean 21st century, the team in Cardiff with Jack, Gwen, Owen, everybody. Well, maybe not Jack, but they can tell stories with that setting, but also because Torchwood has such a rich history implied within the Doctor Who TV show itself, it means that they're able to tell these period stories, and what they've done over the past few years is that they have told these stories with Queen Victoria. And with Rictus, this is a story that takes place in 1901. This is 6 months after the death of Queen Victoria, and Princess Beatrice, who is Queen Victoria's youngest child, she inherits Torchwood. So while King Edward VII is on the throne, there's a period of change and sort of renewal within the British Empire, and with Beatrice being bequeathed Torchwood, she just wants to get stuck right in. She wants to know all about the aliens and the extraterrestrials, everything that has been kept from her, and she feels so isolated because she was the youngest child, but now she's got something she can call her own. Beatrice is played by Fenella Woolgar, who you may remember as Agatha Christie in 2008's The Unicorn and the Wasp. She confronts the head of Torchwood, Mr. Castringham, played by Hugh Fraser, who has played this role before in the Torchwood monthly range in 2022's Torchwood The Empire Man. Beatrice wants to investigate a disappearance in the London Underground, so Castringham pairs her up with Anson, played by Sid Sagar. He's a cool-headed agent, but even his resolve is going to be tested when they go into the London Underground and they discover horrible sights like malformed babies and limbs poking out of these organic fleshy walls, and a conspiracy that dates back decades.
Alive! I'm alive! Dear God! I can't believe I thought I could do this. Stupid bee! Stupid! Mr. Anson! Anson! Where are you? Mr. Anson! There you are. We should close this door.
What? Oh, yes.
Please, forgive me. I panicked.
I didn't notice.
You're being kind. I will never forget what I saw in there. Are you all right?
Yes? Why wouldn't I be?
Oh, you're covered in that stuff. What was that place?
I don't...
I think when I was young, my puppy died. Mama helped me bury it in the garden. I sort of hoped new puppies would grow. And that's what that place, like someone growing people.
As the plot synopsis implies, something has broken out of a vault deep beneath London. The Smiling Man is coming, and that's where we get this really creepy cover, with Rictus being the Latin term for a fixed grin, a fixed grimace. So it's the death of Victorian London meets Torchwood meets the Smile horror film franchise. I gotta say, I really liked this one. There's not actually a lot of plot to speak of. There are quite a few bits of clunky exposition. As you can see from the cast list, there are only 4 actors and 4 characters, so, you know, there is a lot of talking. And around halfway through, there's a really harsh, what I thought at the time was a time skip, but then later in the story, one of the characters establishes that this takes place over the course of 2 days. So it wasn't a time skip, it was just a really abrupt scene transition. However, apart from that, I have very few complaints about Rictus. This was an enthralling mystery story with a hell of a lot of subtext. One of the last things that James Goss wrote for the Torchwood range was July 2024's Torchwood Soho Ascension. This is a separate branch of Torchwood. I did a review of it back then. It's one of my favourite, if not my favourite, Big Finish release of 2024. I'm still sorting out those rankings for the upcoming retrospective. Please bear with me. And the reason I bring this comparison is that James Goss is a writer who loves to imbue the historical period period itself within the world building of the plot that they're trying to tell. When James Goss sets a Torchwood story in 1901, it's not just an incidental detail, there's real thought behind it. And the sense that I got with Rictus is that James Goss is using this time period because it's a really uneasy time for England. A stable, long-running monarch has passed away. King Edward, I don't even think lasts like 10 years on the throne. I can't quite remember my history. Sorry, I realised I can literally just Google that. Yeah, he didn't even last 10 years. But England being England, they want to present a strong front. They want to present, you know, a stiff upper lip and a forced smile despite how depraved their society is becoming. And I don't know enough about the specifics and the personality of England monarchs, but the vibe I got from Rictus as a self-contained story is that you have Bee, who has inherited these vast powers and resources from the British Empire as the youngest child of the late Queen, but because of the sins committed generations ago to create that empire and all these deals and these karmic retributions, they're due, and she's unable to bring in this new golden age because of the sins of the past. Bee is incredibly intelligent and well-read and educated, but at the start of the story at least, she's very naive in the world that she is getting herself into. Now, a lot of that naivete is because Mr. Castringham, who knows all of these dark secrets of the Empire, just refuses to be transparent with her until it's too late, and that is a slight issue with the story. I kind of feel like Mr. Castringham acts the way he does because this needs to be an hour-long story. But then when Bee realises what's going on, what's happening with the Smiling Man, what's happening with the Zygons in London, she's willing to, in one scene, quite literally bury the bodies herself, and that was a brilliant scene. That was a brilliant character moment for Bee. Mr. Castringham has a brilliant line in the story. He says something along the lines of, Torchwood are good at two things, death and cover-ups, and that was such great writing. Part of me kind of thinks that Torchwood Rictus could have been a 2 or a 3-part box set, mainly because I think that the characters in the world could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I think that Agent Anson, played by Sid Segar, is a really good performance. There's just not a lot to the character outside of the exposition he gets in the first act and then the revelations about him in the third act. However, the priority for this box set is establishing the world that the Zygons are invading, and also Princess Bee herself. Fenella Wargar is terrific in this story. There's a great energy and enthusiasm, and when that stiff upper lip falters, particularly in the first act when she is basically thrown headfirst into a really gory and gruesome Torchwood mystery, yeah, she does falter, but then after a moment of recovery, she's got to get right back to the case because she knows that she has a legacy to uphold. And she's given a really fascinating moral dilemma. She's presented with these sins from the past to create this British Empire, presented here in the form of the Zygons. And is she, forgive the literary reference, is she going to be one of the ones who walks away from Omelas? And the thought process the character goes through in the third act, I think Fenella Wargar was terrific at selling it, but it's a really dark characterization that I really hope that the Torchwood range in future expands on. There have been loads of Big Finish Torchwood stories starring Rowena Cooper as Queen Victoria, and Cooper, she's 90 years old. She might be retiring from acting, she might be retiring from the character, which is fair enough, and if that's the case, I would love to see Fenella Wargar sort of pick up the mantle and carry on with more Torchwood stories, because I think it's a really fascinating moral quandary that I'd like to see her maybe deal with a bit more outside the confines of this story. Like if we're going for the Omelas comparison, which is a literary reference, it's a story about a idyllic society called Omelas, and in order to make the society so idyllic, one child has to suffer for the rest of its life. Basically, it's what The Beast Below was working with, the Stephen Moffat story from Series 5. And what we see with Bee is like, mate, who do you think put the child there? Of course we're going to keep this going. In fact, we'll make it worse because we don't want you common folk to rise above your station. And the way that this story divides its morality through class, really effective storytelling. And while the premise of The Smiling Man sounds like, oh, you know, really edgy teenage, you know, slasher horror stuff, it's there to represent a society that is forced to smile as an underclass is oppressed. There's a lot of really effective and freaky body horror and gore in the first act of the story, but what really stuck with me about Rictus was how scary Torchwood are portrayed as an organisation that's changing with the changing of the guard in the early 20th century. It is kind of scary how Torchwood are so easily and quickly are able to make lemonade out of lemons in the third act. And how, yes, the Smiling Man has escaped, this is really bad news. How can we now use the Smiling Man? Now, in terms of the timing of Torchwood Rictus's release, this came out 2 months after the box set Zygon Infiltration, which is a Big Finish box set series. It started with Zygon Century Infiltration, and it's basically going to tell a bunch of stories about how the Zygons infiltrated humanity over the 20th century. The first story, The Unknowing Mirror by Jonathan Barnes, takes place in 1901. While Rictus does not mention anything about that story, There are a couple of references, especially in like a mid-post-credit scene, to the Zygon Century story arc. So I'm assuming that this thread will either be picked up in later box sets, or this could be a way to handwave Torchwood's involvement in Zygon Century. Like, oh, we have the Zygon situation under control, that's why we're not appearing in this box set series. Either way, you don't need to have listened to Zygon Century in order to enjoy Rictus, or vice versa. These are effectively really strong standalone stories. I would recommend Zygon Infiltration anyway. I think that 1935, The Miracle of Pendor Cove by Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle is one of the best stories from the Doctor Who Expanded Universe that I've seen this year so far. I was going to say that it is my favourite Torchwood release in recent memory, but just going back a couple of months, you've got Reflect and Bad Connection, Widdershins and The Hollow Choir and Endgame. These are really good stories, and this is such a consistently good and effective range, especially when it does go out of its traditional wheelhouse and starts telling these separate stories from like the main Torchwood team in the modern day that we know and love. And what James Goss has done here in Rictus is maybe established a brand new status quo for the range moving forward, if they choose to pick it up and run with it, which I really hope they do. Fenella Woolgar would be a terrific lead for this like new branch of Torchwood, and I really look forward to seeing what they do with it if they decide to pursue this avenue, which I really hope they do. So yeah, I loved Torchwood Rictus, a really freaky, effective drama with great historical parallels, and there's some freaky Zygon stuff in there as well. Thank you so much for watching. What did you think of the range? Let me know if you... Thank you so much for watching. What did you think of Rictus? Let me know in the comment section below. Like the video as well, it really helps me out. Subscribe for more Doctor Who Big Finish reviews. And folks, I'll see you all next time.